The summer of 2005 is one of the most coveted periods for Yu-Gi-Oh! What would be fan-dubbed as GOAT format, many would flock back to this early stage of the game. The meta would comprise of everything the TCG was building up to that point. It was a sort of swan song of the Duel Monsters era and dipping into the fresh months of GX. GOAT would become one of the most beloved retro formats in the game's illustrious history due to its humble card pool, competitive metagame, and nostalgic vibes. Hello, I'm Janjo, and in this series we will be uncovering each step on the staircase to the golden age of Yu-Gi-Oh! One that is now 20 years old, almost old enough to drink. This is the history of GOAT. Before we begin, it's important to dictate exactly the time period GOAT format oversaw. GOAT follows the April 2005 list and stretches all the way to the collectible tins 2005. Said tins would not be legal and mark the beginning of the following format. As for the flagship event, that would be SJC Indianapolis in August. Technically speaking, this was during the premier Shonen Jump Championship series that took place between December 2004 to July 2005. The highly sought-after prize card was Cyberstein, an effect monster that by paying 5,000 life points, you could special summon any fusion monster from your fusion deck. The purple cards had plenty of powerful tools to pick from by April. Thousand Eyes Restrict, Master of Oz, Gatling Dragon, Ryu Senshi, etc. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Our journey begins right before the April list to discuss the meta beforehand as to what led to the formation of said list. The previous list was October 2004, where cards mentioned in the August list were finally officially banned, alongside 5 other cards named afterwards. Now, powerful cards like Sangan, Graceful Charity, and Mirror Force were no longer playable in competitive environments. Decks were shadows of their former selves, considering Chaos Control was neutered, for duelists couldn't pull off the deadly Yata lock with Chaos Emperor Dragon, Witch of the Black Forest, and Yata Garasu. As such, duelists had to either adapt or perish by forming new top decks and make use of the upcoming core sets. Though back in Chaos format / April 2004 meta, the GOAT control deck did win Battle City Amsterdam piloted by Fierso de Boer, showing firstly that there were benefits of the token generating spell and having deck synergy even in an age of fearsome Chaos decks. At this point, it was more of an anti-meta tech, since Scapegoat tokens could help alleviate Chaos's OTKs. Scapegoat could even be seen way back in the first big tournament, the 2003 World Championships, as part of the popular hand control deck, with GOAT being a, once again, great tool to prevent a game-ending play, which in this case was the original Yata lock. The game would receive quite a few sets, all tempered in strength, but with notable cards nonetheless. For example, Soul of the Duelist gave access to Mobius the Frost Monarch and Mystic Swordsman level 2, and with Rise of Destiny, the Creator and Monster Reincarnation. While this won't be a February 2005 format, aka Warrior format video per se, it's important to note that duelists use this time to workshop strong Warrior control decks, since Warrior monsters were abundant and strong, and the control strategy fit the speed of the contemporary game. Which was funny because some people thought the October list would allow for a different Warrior deck in Amazonas to claim the throne, but I digress. By the last event in March, SJC Orlando, the final match was Warrior Control, piloted by Andrew Ferdeloa, against GOAT Control, piloted by John Jensen. Despite Jensen's best efforts, it was Ferdeloa who capitalized on Jensen's misplays and card exchanges. The aggressiveness of Warriors was too much, solidifying the format's namesake. Though Warrior decks at this time still ran similar cards to GOAT Control, like Scapegoat, because the two were essentially cousin decks, with one running a slightly higher Warrior count than the other, like more Blade Knights, Deity Assailant, or like from SJC Las Vegas, returned from a different dimension to make use of those banishing DD Warrior ladies, and annoying to deal with Warrior that was unlimited during this format. This is all to say that Go Control had a presence before the titular format. The deck won SJC Anaheim by John Umali in December 2004, which was clearly a big win for the deck in the first post-October list event, though people were still unsure what to make of it stemming back from Amsterdam, calling it a hybrid deck that combined good stuff aspects of the previously existing Chaos branded Go Control deck and a control engine that leaned into fusions more. You could see it as an evolved Chaos control deck, a strategy now thriving on its own merits, whereas others at Anaheim would try the now nerfed Chaos strategy. Continuing on, Go Control tied for third in SJC Las Vegas by Mario James on February 5th, 2005, and it got second at SJC Columbus by Gustavo Reyes on February 13th. Goats had what it took to not only top, but win events of the early 2005 period. It could slow the game down enough to gain control and eventually defeat the opponent by sheer card advantage. Of course, duelists looked at what worked in the OCG with Metamorphosis Balter and were able to reiterate deck strengths, which was something that would equally evolve in Japan as the OCG continued on in Series 4. Go Control in its earliest stage had plenty of synergistic cards. Scapegoat is a powerful defensive quick play spell that summons 4 Scapegoat tokens. This slows down warriors, monsters that otherwise thrive on 1-to-1 trade-offs. With Metamorphosis, the deck could turn those otherwise stagnant level 1 tokens into the powerful fusion Thousand Eyes Restrict. This spellcaster is great for not only preventing those combative warriors from attacking, but it can snatch them up as a form of soft removal. Likewise, Creature Swap could give your opponent tokens and you take a stronger monster away from them. In addition, Magical Scientist could outright summon fusions for a low cost. Scientist would be the most popular method for this deck considering it wasn't once per turn and could bring out other powerful fusion monsters like Fiendskull Dragon and Dark Balter the Terrible. But if you did run Metamorphosis, Scientist, Magician of Faith, and Sinister Serpent were also level 1 monsters that could be turned into Thousand Eyes Restrict, and play nicely with Creature Swap as an added bonus. Gustavo Reyes at SJC Columbus would even run Monster Gate to tribute the tokens and turn them into bigger main deck monsters, rather than run Meta or Scientist for fusions, a different take on Go Control. This is all to say that the deck was anything but solidified in the meta. Sure, it was competent to top multiple events as one of the tier 1 strategies, however, the deck had plenty of counters. Keep in mind that Warrior format is before the release of Flaming Eternity, so while Goats don't have to worry about Lightning Vortex, opposing duelists would run anti-Goat monsters like Air Knight Parshath and King Tiger Wangyu. Asura Priest was not seen at this time. Nobleman of Crossout to hit face downs and Dust Tornado to snipe the back row before Scapegoat could activate certainly only hurt further. At least you could combo Scapegoat with emergency provisions to gain some life points if the spell got hit, which also means Magical Scientist could be used more. While clearly Go Control was evolved from Chaos Control, more top duelists than not realized that the true evolution was in the Warrior Control strategy, at least for the foreseeable future. If Goat bricked, it was an uphill battle from there on out. But the general good stuff for each duelist build was enough to combat not just Warriors, but the other top deck of the format, Earthbeat. Quite honestly, the most Goat Control looking deck that would be familiar to a modern audience would be Michael Vasquez's 5th place deck at SJC Las Vegas with a full playset of both Scapegoat and Metamorphosis, and maxes out on the semi-limited Creature Swap. The way Warrior format would play out through the lens of Goat Control would be one of a deck that was consistently trailing the evident top deck, tailing behind only due to a similar bone structure. The framework was there for a powerful token-based control strategy. If only the card pool and Forbidden list didn't lean towards Warrior decks, because a list can certainly change the direction of the metagame. Before we immediately jump into the list, there was one more major release that was illegal in Warrior format, yet would finally become playable in April. Flaming Eternity, released in North America on March 1st, would feature a variety of fun cards. Chase cards would include, but not limited to, Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys, Gatling Dragon, Deck Devastation Virus, Lightning Vortex, and Threatening Roar. The set also introduced the Hexial Fusion cards, additional level support, as well as beast type support. Some duelists were looking forward to Gearfried the Swordmaster as a way to make a spicy new warrior deck. Also, there was good goblin housekeeping that wouldn't be of note until the April list drops. Speaking of, when April arrived, plenty would get moved around the list. Fiber Jar, Magical Scientist, Butterfly Dagger Elma, Change of Heart, Confiscation, Mirage of Nightmare, Painful Choice, and the Forceful Sentry were all banned. Oof. However, Upper Deck was simply rotating out power as a strong slew came off Forbidden status. Sangan, Delinquent Duo, Graceful Charity, United We Stand, and Mirror Force. It appears Upper Deck was seeing which power cards would be healthier in the meta, as these were infamous cards people knew, and shaped how the game evolved up to that point. Is Confiscation or Duo better? Graceful Charity or Mirage of Nightmare? Pick your poison. At the very least, Go Control players lost their keycard in Scientist, though the loss of any related OTKs must have been a breath of fresh air. Machiora the Destructor would be banned due to a degenerate combo with Chick the Yellow. The new Flaming Eternity cards would also get hits, such as Sacred Phoenix, Lightning Vortex, Deck Devi, and Good Goblin Housekeeping. That final card may seem weird considering its odd effect, yet its secret power was that it could be abused by chaining copies of itself with emergency provisions to combo into a maximum yield of 12 draws and 3 return cards. The last important note regarding the list was the limitation to DD Warrior Lady. Of all the hits from the list, this was the clear result of the previous top deck success. So now not only Go Control, but Warrior Control had to go back to the drawing board. The rest of the list would be changed due to card mentality at the time, like Vampire Lord and Abyss Soldier. Some reasoning makes sense, others require a bit more logic, but hey, that's how lists tend to go. This was also the time we'd see the next Duelist League promo card in Toon Goblin Attack Force. Toons having a strong low-level beater was great for the casual deck, and would go on to be a strong card in skill drain-based strategies. Yet one thing was for sure, and that was decks had to reinvent themselves once again, charging into the new meta. Moving forward in time, we arrive at SJC Los Angeles on April 2nd, to where duelists battle with the newly implemented lists for that coveted second copy of Cyberstein. Many eyes at the event would look at decks like Chaos Warrior, Zombie, and Beast Down, considering Eternity just gave players a bunch of beast support for the beatdown strategy that counters scapegoat decks. The zombie strategy got a second copy of Vampire Lord with plenty of unique zombie cards, and Warriors still had cards that could fill in the 2 empty slots DD Warrior Lady left, and a Blackluster Soldier is still broken. Some thought the return deck would be popular too, since the tempo control was alluring, giving its options like Bazoo, Strike Ninja, and a plethora of DD monsters alongside Chaos. Clearly, Zombies was the hot new list, with Vampire Lord being the belle of the ball. Even to the point where duelists here would combine Zombies with Return as an anti-zombie deck to banish those pesky lords. If anything, it's interesting to look at the new tech the new list created, such as Magical Merchant filling the void of Mirage, Tribe Infecting Virus or New Doria in place of a DD Warrior Lady. Even Magician of Faith and Phoenix Wing Wind Blast played a factor at LA, for Faith could recur Duo to disrupt the hand and Wind Blast to disrupt the board. This is to say that Phoenix was popular as well to not only complement Lord's revival capabilities, but for Scapegoat as well. The cookie cutter strategy of the format's past were evolving into a much more creative era. Top 8 at SJC Los Angeles would feature almost all different decks sans 2. Flip Control, Goat Control, Soul Control, Beast Down, Zombie Control, and Chaos Zombie. Despite all the theory crafting at the event, the results speak for themselves. Due to the strong cards still in existence like BLS and Serpent, any deck could theoretically win, such as Soul Control using Thestalos in conjunction with Duo to rip apart the opponent's hand, or Flip Control revolving around Tsukiyomi and recurring powerful back row cards. Even Lockdown Burn and Mill OTK were shown here, making for a fun, unique event to kick off what would be known as GOAT format. That is, unless you're part of the war between Team Comic Odyssey, Team Naruto, and Team Savage, with CO clutching the first place spot by Eric Wu, showing that combining the tried and true Chaos engine with the popular zombie deck alongside skillful plays was the recipe for victory. Staying in April between the 16th and 17th would be the UK National Championship. This is where BLS would prove to be a widespread, fearsome boss monster, something that most, if not all, top decks strive to summon. Even that top 8 Horus deck was aware of BLS's power. For the most part, however, the results were not far off from LA. Go Control would continue to evolve, like with Han Wei Tang making use of a full playset of Metamorphosis to access Thousand Eyes Restrict. Joe Whitaker played a fun Warrior Control deck that used Mephisto Infernal General and Mirror Wall. Yet that wouldn't be enough against Adam Krasinski's Good Stuff deck, a seemingly random assortment of impact cards. Lastly, for the month of April, there was SJC Houston on the 30th. This is where we'd see the meta start to take form. Local teams enter the tournament to try and take a bite out of the big dog, Comic Odyssey. This would bring some new tech theories such as running Giant Orc and Deck Devi in zombies. One person even considered the potential of a Jinzo number 7 OTK. Yet the equipped deck that would make a mark would be 3rd place Chad Justice's Ben K OTK. Armed Samurai Ben K was a new card from FET that gained an additional attack for each equipped card equipped to it. When stacking buffs like United We Stand, Mage Power, Axe of Despair, and Big Bang Shot, not even Scapegoat could prevent mass damage. Even last turn, Spell Economics OTK, Panda Beat with a Burnside conversion, and Serial Chaos would show up here, making Houston anything but defined. Of course, many disliked OTKs, preferring to face Chaos, Beasts, Zombie, or Goat decks. Or you could be like Nate Neilbeck and play Canceller Stun, a strategy device to counter many of the spell-heavy builds. If anything, the awareness of Ben K OTK scared many top duelists here. Yet despite the hype of Ben K OTK, the deck was too inconsistent against a well-played GOAT deck. Comic Odyssey's mindset led them to the final 2, ensuring the team's one of many Cybersteins. It was GOAT Control by Therasak Punsambat against GOAT Control by Ryan Hayakawa. Suddenly, GOAT Control was where it was at, because Thousand Eyes Restrict could bypass the annoying effects of Pyramid Turtle and Vampire Lord by sucking them up for further advantage, on top of uses against a variety of other decks. Perhaps Hayakawa's Singleton Exchange was too much. The month had a godly start, as Shonen Jump promoted Obelisk the Tormentor as their May 2005 subscription bonus. I can't say when exactly subscribers attained the card, but nevertheless it was alluring. This would be the final god card they needed to be released, so collectors would certainly enjoy this. And yes, the card cannot be used in a duel like the other two. Unless you were on the playground and pretended Obelisk had its anime effect. Then go at it, passionate duelist. Obelisk aside, the first real release of May would be on the 9th. The twin structure decks, Blaze of Destruction and Fury from the Deep. Fire and water is definitely a more contrasting theme than the previous zombie and dragons. If you wanted a pre-constructed deck, then these would be a great buy. They contain plenty of reprints like Pot of Greed, Snatch Steel, and Torrential Tribute, many of which were relatively new cards like the Stalos in Rise of Destiny, Meteor of Destruction in Flaming Eternity, and Hammershot in Soul of the Duelist. In regards to new cards, the set only included 2, which were the cover cards, Infernal Flame Emperor and Ocean Dragonlord, Neo Daedalus. Emperor was casual at best, being a boss monster revolving around the lackluster fire attribute and specific backer removal. Blaze of Destruction simply had a lack of focus, not knowing whether it wanted to be a burn deck or beatdown, thus being the inferior deck of the two. Lord, on the other hand, had an interesting first print. Originally, the effect didn't include a summoning condition, making it normal summonable and special summonable through other means like Revival or Monster Gate. This lack of text was unintended, with a fixed first edition print getting rushed out to stores. The fix made it so Lord needed to tribute a Leviathan Dragon Daedalus to be summoned first, reducing the monster's power output. Shame, because otherwise it's like a water Chaos Emperor dragon. Even still, many would buy Fury from the Deep for its wonderful exclusives like Tribe Infecting Virus and Mobius the Frost Monarch. Then again, the main draw of these two decks were the wonderful reprints shared across both, should you wind up with your unpreferred pick. Which reminded me of Dark Revelation 1 back on March 19th. Large reprint sets like this and the decks are always nice to have for casual and competitive duelists alike. Decreased rarity aside, the amount of cards featured in each pack, that being 12 instead of the usual 9, was great for anyone looking to enter into the game or pick up cards previously missed. Not to mention the tip cards to spread game knowledge, like using rare gold armor on defensive cards, to understanding the difference between life point cost and damage. Though it was odd that the previous reprint set, Dark Beginning 1, went to Labyrinth of Nightmare, whereas Revelation skipped Legacy of Darkness to go straight to Pharaonic Guardian. So no Asura Priest reprints yet for those anti-Go Control duelists, but reprinting Metamorphosis was arguably a nicer addition. Speaking of the card pool, while it would be a bit before the next core set, May 18th saw Upper Deck's Kevin Tewart make an important announcement. The post would be that the upcoming set, the Lost Millennium, would be legal as soon as the set came out, with the exception of premier events. Such events include anything major like regionals, nationals, and SJCs. However, you could play them in Duelist League events if you really wanted to play them right away. This was certainly odd when looking at Upper Deck's track record. Flaming Eternity became legal by the April list, which was after the winter SJC period in February. Rise of Destiny was seemingly legal on release considering the SJCs around the time using its card pool, and Soul of the Duelist came out the same day as the October list. In theory, TLM should be legal on release since the current format just began, one that will lead into National Season. It's weird, right? Why have a new set be legal for certain events, but not others? Seems like a confusing way to keep semi-casual and top-level duelists split. This strange announcement would be the catalyst for a certain card's legality roughly a decade later. Duelists would still be able to get a sneak peek of the set between May 28th and the 29th. There, you could try all the new tech. If you attended, you also got the new Amazoness Chainmaster. This warrior, when destroyed by battle, lets you pay 1500 life points to take a monster from your opponent's hand. It's a bit niche for an effect, yet still cool if you're an Amazoness fan, or maybe it incentivized you to pick up an Amazoness deck. If you didn't pick up the card here, you would have to wait until its inclusion as a Shonen Jump promo card come September. Yeah, this wasn't actually in the Lost Millennium proper. Otherwise, this preview event allowed duelists a chance to pick up some notables early, like GX-related cards and Brain Control. Pulling those first E-heroes must have been a true experience. Many were also eyeing all the new Earth cards, like Mega Rock Dragon for its OTK potential. There was also Asa, the Earth Charmer, as a way to play against Earth-oriented Go Control decks, Beast Down, and Zombies. Deity Survivor was also looked at as anti-banish tech against Deity Warrior Lady and Chaos monsters, in addition to Survivor being a dark, complementing it with Lady. Lastly, there was Level Conversion Lab as an interesting trap for certain plays like reducing tribute cost, having a monster play under Gravity Bind, as well as potential use with Metamorphosis. Generally, the sentiment towards the Lost Millennium preview event was that it was cool to mess around with these cards early and pick up some shiny cardboard as well, especially those ultimate rares. After all, the set would take some time to be premier event viable, allowing for more playtesting. But many top duelists saw TLM as a distraction. A distraction in the sense the set was focused towards Earth monsters, whereas the meta was pushing the direction of Chaos, Light and Dark. And Blackluster Soldier and Ancient Gear Golem is not. Hey, maybe things will change when the set actually comes out, so let's wait and see on its viability. And that's really all there is to May 2005. There were World Championship qualifiers during this month, such as the Australian and Greek Nats, but no major events in the States. The ones that were overseas, we don't really have much information on due to the lack of posting or links lost to the sands of time. The refusal of the Lost Millennium to the immediate upcoming meta must have taken the breath away from duelists who were looking forward to an evolved game, especially as the legality date had yet to be stated, and as the US Nationals were only a few months ahead. If it were to be legal by that point, would people have enough time to mess around with it in a meaningful manner? June would fire off not one, not three, but 2 releases on the 1st. Let's start with Tournament Pack 6. For those who really wanted those Legacy of Darkness reprints that were omitted from Dark Revelation 1, then this set would make you happy. While it doesn't include a ton of cards in its 20-card set, it is a tournament pack after all, it featured a decent selection like Air Knight Parshath, Last Turn, and the 3 effect fusions. It also included further reprints that were needed, Royal Decree and Restructor Revolution, of which were previously only available in Tournament Pack 4 and Duelist League Series 5 respectively. Not to mention fun OCG imports, where Clown Zombie would be notable for being the strongest level 2 zombie normal monster. Spirit of the Pharaoh fans rejoice! What's more important are the new cards from TP6, Toon Cannon Soldier, Toon Table of Contents, and Fusion Sage. Toons wouldn't be meta viable, however having a search card is great for the casual strategy, as well as being a solid deck thinner in certain decks that can lead to the new Toon card that deals burn damage, and enabling potential OTKs for those decks who like it. Really, the biggest release here is Fusion Sage, a polymerization searcher. Like Toon Table, this is a great searcher that was a long time coming. Hard to believe a card like this took 4 years into the TCG to see its imports. But hey, better late than never. Granted, King of the Swamps was out by this point. It's just now you can save King as a backup or as a fusion sub and let Sage do its job. Would it have been nice if instead of LOD reprints we got further imports like Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon? Absolutely, but I digress. Then we finally get the core set I've been hyping up since the previous video, the Lost Millennium. This set rocks, or at least it features a lot of rock monsters, some of which would raise some eyebrows such as Mega Rock Dragon, Master Monk, and Medusa Worm. And there were other neat cards you could pull that would help a variety of decks like King of the Skull Servant, Deity Survivor, and Death's Wombat. Alternatively, you may be in search of GX staples since the set introduced cards featured in the anime like Elemental Heroes, even though it was a rather humble beginning. In that regard, you'd have thought this was the first GX set, but I'm unsure about how accurate that is. Rise of Destiny was the final core set to include Yami Yugi on the cover. Flaming Eternity wouldn't include a character on its cover. That is, unless you were in the OCG, where it did in fact include the GX protagonist Jaden. It's all in Series 4, so I wonder if Konami didn't want to wait to capitalize on the premiere of GX, which premiered 1 month prior to Eternity's release, and slapped Jaden on the cover. Otherwise, I'm sure the set would have included E-Heroes at the very least. Which makes it funny that many consider GOAT format to be the culmination of Duel Monsters era Yu-Gi-Oh!, when in actuality it is a GX format. Speaking of GX, many were eyeing the anime-included cover star, Ancient Golem. Golem was seen by some as a demanding yet strong boss monster. It has protection, works with limiter, and pierces through goats. But the downsides were noted, such as a lack of special summoning and back row outside the battle phase. Plus, Bottomless was popular due to Phoenix and Vampire Lord. If we're being honest, the most sought after card in the set was the new spell, Brain Control. Take control of a face-up monster for a turn. This is to Change of Heart as Lightning Storm is to Raigeki. That's to say it's not as strong and arguably better or worse compared to Mind Control depending on who you ask. But it's like another Snatch Steal and lets you attack and tribute the monster, something Minecon can't. But Minecon can't target face downs. Thus BrainCon was seen as a strong, albeit balanced card. While the upcoming SJCs wouldn't allow TLM in their card pool, a German UDE tournament appendix mentions TLM's legality on July 1st, so it would only be a matter of time before duelists could uncover cards from 1,000 years ago. In the meantime, there would be a plethora of ruling updates by Kevin Tuert and Dan Scheidegger, the junior game designer at UDE, that would certainly affect the direction of the metagame. Effective June 6, mandatory and optional effects are differentiated. This means ignition effects cannot be activated when a monster is face down, like the Creator Incarnate and Hand of Nephthys. Dark Magician of Chaos can now miss timing if summoned in the middle of a chain. There'd be other rulings, although the big one has to be the battle position rule change. This change allows for you to manually change the position of a monster unless you attacked or summoned it that turn. While that sounds normal by game mechanics, this allows for card effects to majorly affect the game. Say if you summon a Tsukiyomi and flip your own monster face down. Beforehand, that monster would be stuck for a turn, but now you can reflip that monster face up. This definition of a manual change would allow for more game interaction on both ends, whether it's Tsukiyomi or Book of Moon. Flip monsters suddenly gain more versatility to trigger their effects more often. Likewise, Thousand Eyes Restrict can be flipped back up to suck up another monster. The combo potential of Go Control just increased, as well as their capabilities of dealing with previously tough monsters like Vampire Lord or Thestalos, now that Suk and Tyr have more conventional outs to them. Needless to say, these rulings are more notable to June than TLM was. Which leads us to the first SJC of the month at New Jersey on June 11th. While still no TLM, the rule change would signify a shift in the format. Many were expecting to see more Go Control decks, or as it was known back then, Thousand Eyes Lock. Yet what happened was that the deck wasn't as dominant as some thought. This was due to the fact that people weren't quite sure the best way to tackle such a controlling deck, meaning comfortability was a factor here. Many of the GOAT decks would look similar aside from Wilson Luke's second place build that was geared towards more flip monsters like Magician of Faith, Night Assailant, and Slate Warrior, compared to third place Brian Coronel's more traditional Go Control build. It proved the Metamorphosis build's effectiveness in this testing ground, setting the stage up for national season. There was a typical showcase of decks in relation to how the meta was building up thus far. Standard Chaos beat, Nephthys Control, and Warrior Chaos. Even Ben-K OTK would return here as it was gaining steam due to its prior testing. Some tech cards here included Enraged Battlelocks as an answer to GOAT tokens, Asura Priest was another answer to GOATs and Apprentice Magician, plus it's a light for Chaos. Wave Motion Cannon to force an answer from the opponent and draw back row removal away, and Night Assailant to combo with all the flips. But the real threat would be the East Coast powerhouse team, Team Overdose. They made their presence in an era where Team Comic Odyssey was dominating. OD got 2 members in top 8 compared to CO's 3. Even with other teams at the event, the East Coast was representing their side. Unfortunately for them, it would be CO taking another Cyberstein by the previous SJC winner, Ryan Hayakawa, winning with Chaos Beatdown. Would Team Overdose be able to bounce back at the next SJC on the 25th? Come the fateful day, and SJC Charlotte would continue pushing the boundaries of the format. Aside from a neat machine control deck, we'd see a push towards Go Control, though top 8 included Warrior Control, a strange floater control deck, and second place Zombie by Jay Kim, believing in the deck's merits. Third place Tyrone Cox's Go Control build would feature some unique tech like Fusilier Dragon, Monster Reincarnation, Different Dimension Capsule, and Magic Cylinder. Even looking at the more highlighted tech, it was clear that GOATs were in season. For example, Chain Disappearance was a way to deal with flips and GOATs, or even Terror since the trap will get rid of all copies of Terror. Gyakugire Panda is similar to Ox in that it punishes GOATs. It worked in both beatdown and as a tech card, especially since it may be bigger than Asura Priest. Big Bang Shot was also used since Ben-K made it work so well. Big Bang Shot plus Trunate was seen as a good combo, and even Big Bang Shot plus Asura. Possessed Dark Soul was another answer to the Thousand Eyes lock. It gives you Tyr and GOATs instead of simply destroying them at a widespread level. Yet the largest upset had to be Team Overdose finally pulling out a victory over Comic Odyssey. Yes, their dominance was put to a halt by none other than Anthony Alvarado. His classic-styled GOAT control deck proved to be the correct meta call over zombies, one of the forefather decks of GOAT format. You could even argue that this is where GOAT format truly began. The final release of June would be the Duelist League Series 8 participation card on the 30th. Said card would be Acid Rain, a tribal destruction for machine types. In addition to Exile of the Wicked from Tournament Pack 2, this makes up 2 of the 6 tribal destruction cards the TCG would receive in time for GOAT format. I'm unsure why it took Upper Deck this long to import rather general spells. After all, Warrior Elimination would have been useful against those pesky Warrior decks, or even Breath of Light in lieu of the Lost Millennium's release. But Acid Rain? Well, I suppose you could build a fun DNA Surgery Pac-Man deck. Hey, maybe someone at Upper Deck had it out for that machine control player, who's to say? As mentioned, the Lost Millennium would finally be legal at major events a month after the set's release. The testing at smaller events certainly strained the viability of many cards by July. For it wouldn't be cards like Level Conversion Lab, Mega Rock Dragon, or even Ancient Golem that would make an impact, because at the same premiere July date, the US Nationals tournament was held in Columbus, Ohio, and we'd only see a few TLM cards showcased. Brain Control was the obvious one, as stealing face-up monsters for a turn was nothing short of powerful, given the rather limited options for card taking. Snatch Steal, Mind Control, Creature Swap. Half of the top 8 played it, with 3 main decking it. DD Survivor was another card seen at Nats. A lot of duelists saw it as counterplay to Chaos Monsters and opposing DDs. After all, Survivor could barely beat over DD Assailant. Being able to return every turn if banished was great, as people were starting to understand that banishing monsters more often was indeed powerful. However, for Survivor's case, some waited to see how the meta would shape up here before taking any sides. There was also Death's Wombat scene, which was viewed as a great counter to burn decks since Wombat prevents card effect damage, though top 8 would only see 2-sided copies for a single duelist. Turned out, burn and a lot of alternate strategies were left on the lower tables and last chance qualifiers. Speaking of that, there was a new rule at this event that would surprise many LCQ duelists. The new end of match procedure now calls for 3 remaining turns, with the winner being whoever has higher life points. This ruling was to stop stalling, which tended to lead to sudden death. Thus, slower decks like Last Turn and Final Countdown lost strength, especially since Last Turn just got a reprint in Tournament Pack 6. People can still play to time, but there's generally less incentive to stall now. At the very least, it lets duelists try more interesting tech like Mirage Dragon or Zombira the Dark to permit early aggression for beatdown decks. Clearly, the new procedure made duelists want to play faster. And it wasn't just at that level for new tech. US Nats is also where Chaos Sorcerer was starting to see more play as, per mentioned earlier, banishing monsters and thus shutting off revival spells was a solid move, even if Sork didn't have the double attack that BLS has. After all, Thousand Eyes Restrict was being adopted in higher frequencies now, which Sork could take care of in addition to general roadblocks like the DD family or higher stat mons. Most decks ran chaos-friendly cards anyway, in which Sork was a dark, and synergized with Metamorphosis to allow access for powerful fusions, primarily in Ryu Senshi and Dark Blade the Dragon Knight. It's funny in retrospect, given how modern audiences view Sork, but it had to start somewhere. Remember, people weren't big on him on release in Invasion of Chaos since there were stronger Chaos bosses, and Sork was a petty common for that matter. Like, oh, you're gonna banish a monster? Great, what else? But wait, there's more! We also saw people trying Chain Disappearance once again. It was a favorite for those who ran it since it kills many meta-related combos, plus it gives way for aggressive pushes, even more so since you can use it on your own cards as proactive removal. Another card was Elephant Statue of Disaster in lieu of increasing Morphing Jars, which won the Mexico Nationals, Last Turn decks, which won the Argentina Nationals, and the already played Delinquent Duo. It also works against damage step cards like Spirit Reaper and Don Zalug. The 2K punishment was great in an age where LP was more glorified, which ironically it would benefit in time play despite its use against Last Turn becoming moot. When it comes to the meat and potatoes of the US Nats, it was evident that Tsukiyomi and Thousand Eyes Restrict were the top dogs. Even known zombie enthusiast and top-level competitor Jay Kim would switch from zombies to chaos, signifying Vampire Lord's exit from the meta. This is to speak to GOAT Control's overall meta viability as more and more duelists would adopt the strategy. And to be clear, this was a large turnout with 482 competitors in total. The reigning US champ Thirasak Punsumbat didn't make it into the top cut. Two-time SJC winner Ryan Hayakawa didn't make it either, as did the previous SJC champ Anthony Alvarado. In regards to top 8, Team Overdose had 3 members, Brian Coronel, Jerry Wang, and Rimus Lizzo, whereas Team Comic Odyssey had no representation. At least top 4 will be going to the World Championship in August, so stay tuned for that, with the finals being between Team Alpha Omega's Max Suffrage and Team Nexus's Miguel Garcia. Max Suffrage would win with an honestly modern-looking Thousand Eyes lock build, minus the side deck where Poison of the Old Man was a clear sign of the new EOMP rule. But from being 1 against 481, Suffrage's ability to abuse Sook is nothing short of a legendary feat in such a major event of old-school Yu-Gi-Oh! And would define a power shift moving into later tournaments. One such tournament would be SJC Seattle, only a week or so later on July 8th. This event was notable for being the final SJC to contain Cyberstein as the prize card. While it wouldn't signify the end of the format, it would be the last place to obtain such a powerful card for the time being. Thus, duelists from all over flocked to the Emerald City and, appropriate to the format at this point, brought their Thousand Eyes lock decks. However, since this was a West Coast event, you can imagine which team absolutely made a presence here. Yes, Comic Odyssey came to win one final Stein. Unfortunately, due to internet decay, I am unable to find the spicy tech of the event, but when it comes to brass tacks, the GOAT engine was ultimate. Mostly everyone in the top 8 were playing the lock aside from Jay Kim and Thirasak Punsumbat playing Warrior Control. Cards like Air Knight Parshath, Asura Priest, Lightning Vortex, and Ceasefire were all popular. Though some did try some unique singletons such as Deity Designator, Robin Goblin, and Big Shield Gardna. Whereas the finals between Robert Lim and CO's Osman Ortiz both playing the lock. Now was not the time for experimenting. Top duelists knew what worked. The match truly began before the cards were even drawn, as the Metagame report states, quote, "The match began with a race to see who could get to the seat facing the windows first. Robert won, but since he's such a nice guy, he let Osman have it anyway," unquote. That would be Lim's only win. Ortiz would go on to win the finals 2-0, securing CO one final Stein for their collection. At this point, they were seemingly guaranteed a win if Team Overdose didn't show up. It helps when you're running the obscure Guardian KS. Ortiz's deck had one specific mission, and that was to block attacks. Spirit Reaper can't be destroyed by battle, Scapegoat blocks damage, and Swords of Revealing Light stops attacks altogether. Thank God we didn't have Marshmallow like the OCG. While KS can only be summoned while you control its matching equip, you are allowed to set the monster. KS is unaffected by spell effects, but more importantly, it can't be targeted for attacks. Keep in mind that this does not prevent your opponent from going through her and attacking directly. Unfortunately, those who are unaware of this caveat would just think they can't attack whatsoever, and it has 1800 defense. It's respectable. It's not a ruling thing, it's a knowledge check, and plenty of opponents took the bait. Hook, line, and KS'd. While the next prize card wouldn't be revealed until its first event, a phenomenal reprint set would appear that would open the floodgates to deck availability moving into the tail end of the format. Released on July 27th, Duelist received Dark Beginning 2. This sequel to DB1 might just be one of the greatest reprint sets Yu-Gi-Oh! Has ever received. Am I hyperbolic? Let's discuss the set, and you let me know in the comments below. The set contains cards from Metal Raiders, as well as Labyrinth of Nightmare through Pharaonic Guardian. While some of these sets have seen reprints of late, more prints is never a bad thing. More so when DB2 includes older cards that had yet to see a reprint like Mirror Force and Graceful Charity. Let alone a lot of cards that would finally debut in Europe like PGD cards and promos of the like. Speaking of previously hard to obtain, now it's significantly easier for one to get rare cards like collectible tin promos, hobby league cards, tournament pack staples, including the recent releases like Fusion Sage, and more importantly, the recent SJC prize card, Cyberstein. Just as the card disappeared, it reappeared again. I wonder how Comic Odyssey must have felt. In addition to the tip cards and new cards in Toon Mass Sorcerer and Toon Defense, DB2 was a duelist wet dream. It combined so many power cards in a set that each pack contained 12 cards, with reduced rarity, meaning sought-after cards were easier to obtain than ever before. And this was right before Worlds, with time still left in the current April 2005 format. This balanced the scales immensely in a way unseen before. Now it wasn't just Sia with Steins. A kid at a Toys R Us could obtain one with a simple rip of a pack. Or your local team could start gathering morphing jars and needleworms for that mill deck you swear will win the next SJC. I can't understate just how important DB2 was, not just for reprints, but to the meta as a whole. August 2005 would kick off with something rather nice, a Make-A-Wish Foundation promotional card, Tyler, the Great Warrior. This card, designed by Tyler Gressel, who was diagnosed with a rare form of liver cancer, created a monster that looks more like it belongs in the DBZ CCG than Yugioh, but hey, it's still cool. While being initially drawn by him, the card would evolve by Kazuki Takahashi himself. Obviously, this is a single print, which thankfully survives to this day, as does Gressel, who made a full recovery. The card would go up on eBay in 2023 to assist with Gressel's family and future planning, selling for over $300,000 amongst 179 bids. Wow. Funnily enough, it's not illegal in an official capacity, so whoever bought it could actually play the card. Imagine that at your locals. The Cyberstein era would finally culminate at the 2005 World Championship at Ariake, Japan, between August 6th and the 7th. 40 participants flocked to the land of the rising sun in Yu-Gi-Oh's largest World Championship to date, partially due to all the European national champions receiving an invite. Given it was Japan, many expected duelists from Japan and Hong Kong to dominate, yet top 3 would be from Greece, Mexico, and Germany. We'd see familiar decks like Burn, Thousand Eyes Lock, and Chaos Warrior. More surprising were the top 3. Third place, Machine Chaos by David Kretschmer, a surprising limiter removal deck. Second place, Deck Destruction by Jorge Lizarraga, a deck I'm sure duelists were not prepared to face. And first place, Nephthys Control by Miltiades Marco, an old school looking deck that was still solid. Winners would receive a set of 3 cards: King of Destruction Zezix, Queen of Fate Eternia, and an Asian English copy of Firewing Pegasus. If you wanted to play Pegasus in the TCG, sadly you have to wait until 2012's Premium Collection tin. As for the other 2, they would follow the same type-specific match winners that cannot be used in a duel like the 2004 Worlds had. This time, it was Fiend and Fairy types. Many would look at this point in time and see it as either Chaos Meta or Chaos Warrior. Thus, surprises like Mill and Nephthys were able to rise up. I suppose you can't truly kill a phoenix. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a game all about card advantage, and Scapegoat was the most advantageous of them all. As such, a high-level event like Worlds was bound to see less experimentation and more trusted strategies. But if you were to take the risk, and with proper gameplay, you might be left with a net positive. It was generally seen as a great event, despite some wishing US Nats champion Max Suffrage went higher than top 16. If you weren't attending Worlds, that same day was the sneak peek event for the upcoming core set, Cybernetic Revolution. The card for attendees would be Embodiment of Apophis, a trap monster that wouldn't get another release until a Shonen Jump promo in November. Due to the nature of this event, Apophis would be legal in competitive GOAT format. While it doesn't see much play in modern GOAT, the idea is fun and could adapt well into Monarch decks. We'll circle back to the set soon enough. GOAT format would not be done here as SJCs continued, the first of which would be SJC Indianapolis on August 20th. It would be at this Gen Con where the new prize card was unveiled, Des Volksgalf. This dragon, upon destroying a monster, inflicts 500 damage to the opponent. It also gains 200 attack points for a turn each time a normal or quick play spell resolves. On paper, it's a far cry from the potential of Stein, and others thought so too. It's an expensive burn card with better tributes out there in terms of both attack power and effects. It doesn't have any synergy with Chaos decks, nor the upcoming core set. At best, it's the chase card to win, and it has cool art that gained popularity due to its overseas nature. The post-Worlds environment was an exciting one, given the freshness of the prize for who will be the first to win one. It was New Horizons that would showcase tech here, such as Big Shield Gardna as a large defense that protected you from Noblemen of Crossout, Magical Merchant that Team Overdose was seeing success with, given it can accomplish a variety of goals like burying monsters, to dig for Sinister Serpent, to being general tempo manipulation. Dual Decrees were also popular here considering the increasing percentage of trap cards like Ring, Mirror Force, and Torrential Tribute. Chain Disappearance is even continuing to see play when factoring in how well GOAT decks did at Worlds. While we'd see some notable decks like Gravekeeper and Goat Burn, the upper echelon of duelists would play a familiar tune. The finals would be between Michael Fukuyama and Nareg Torosian. Both would be playing GOAT control to the surprise of little. By the final game, Fukuyama lost track of his depleting life points, in which Torosian capitalized on, ensuring him the first copy of Death Voltsgolf. The Death Dragon would remain the prize card until April 2006. SJC Indianapolis would mark the end to the observed GOAT format period, as it proved to be a defining moment in the GOAT strategy being a dominant one. But we're not done here. A few days prior to Gen Con Indy would be the release of Cybernetic Revolution. Clearly, the set was not legal at said event and would be marked legal on September 9th, in a similar fashion to the Lost Millennium. This was a set everyone was looking out for, given its plethora of meta-defining cards. Since this is a series about GOAT format, I won't go too in-depth on CRV. Just know that it introduced the Cyber Dragon archetype that gave the game significant firepower in both going second strategies and OTK potential thanks to the fusions. There was also the Roid archetype that had a couple of powerful low-level monsters in Drillroid and Steamroid. And of course the new hero cards in Elemental Hero Bubble Man, Miracle Fusion, and Indirect Support in Fusion Recovery. Slap on notable singletons like Cybernetic Magician, Dragon's Mirror, and Magical Explosion, and you got one powerful set. A set that would help define a post-GOAT era Yu-Gi-Oh! While CRV would be a goalpost for what marks a new meta, the upcoming promotional cards would muddy the waters in the future. August 30th would see the Nightmare Troubadour video game promo cards, Silent Magicians level 4 and 8, as well as Magician's Circle. Plus September 5th, 2005 collectible tins that included a ton of new cards, aside from an alt-art Dark Magician Girl, Guilford the Lightning, Exarion Universe, Forest Raider, Rocket Warrior, and Panther Warrior. A lot of fun new paper rectangles that would be all legal on release. It's surprising it took this long for cards like Forest Raider and Rocket Warrior to come to the TCG, but I digress. However, there would actually be one more event from this historical time period, and that would be SJC Boston on September 10th, one day after CRV's legalization. The month would be rather quiet aside from this event, making it a bit of an odd one, as this would be the single SJC before the upcoming ban list, yet would feature the tin promos primarily in Exarion Universe, and Cybernetic Revolution primarily in Cyber Dragon. Exarion is strong, as it has high stats for a low-level monster and pierces, making it a great tech against the popular GOAT control decks. It was essentially an upgrade to Kaiku. And Cyber Dragon gives you a great comeback tool that can beat over most low-level monsters and also be tribute fodder. Cyber Twin Dragon would likewise see play as a meta target in exchange for a BLS. Brian Long would take the gold against OD's Brian Coronel, thanks to his tech in Different Dimension Capsule and 3 Sakuretsu armors, which no doubt helped counter opposing Xerions and Sidras. Capsule, which was seen as an East Coast card previously, saw play for it could grab you powerful spells or answers to problematic cards, and take the bullet for backward destruction, much like Wave Motion Cannon did. SJC Boston in many ways was a transition point between the summer of 2005 into the autumn season. Duelists still weren't fully adapted to the new set quite yet. Given Boston still followed the April 2005 list, the event was still very much GOAT format coded. Speaking of a list, October 1st would mark a legitimate end to the golden age of Yu-Gi-Oh! With a new round of hit cards. This list would pull no punches, as it aimed to mark a shift in the competitive landscape. With seemingly endless limitations and ban markings, GOAT control as we knew it was officially dead. Thousand Eyes Restrict, Tsukuyomi, Scapegoat, and Metamorphosis were all limited, with BLS, Sinister Serpent, Tribe, and a bunch of other powerful back row cards getting banned. And that's just some of the cards that got hit, but you get the gist. The only relief was Confiscation and Dark Hole coming off, which, yay? At least Exchange of the Spirit was prematurely limited before it could cause a ruckus. And if you were a zombie fan, then seeing Vampire Lord off the list entirely must have been nice to see. Where's J. Kim? Konami clearly saw the direction, nay, the current condition of the meta. What was once a gold rush got mined into a GOAT-centric shaft where decks started to look the same. Something had to be changed, and killing off the main strategy was certainly one way to do it. For now, duelists had to adapt and make new meta calls to keep things relatively fresh in the eyes of Konami. Would it be enough? Time will tell. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a constantly evolving game. The GOAT Control era's finality was inevitable. Future formats came and went like Reaper, Gladiator, and Edison. But people don't forget times in the game, times in their lives, and look back with nostalgia. And technically speaking, the cards are still around to play with, even if not in an official tournament capacity. Thus, when the game starts to get stale, frustrating, or you've simply gotten out of the loop, retro formats are a safe place to go back to. Much like the Janjo zone, haha. It's tough to pinpoint when exactly duelists started to flock back home, but a great guess would be with the creation of the online simulator Dueling Network in May 2011. This was during the final year of 5Ds and soon to be the first full year of Zexal. As the fan-made web-based simulator would gain popularity, so would people trying out the slower formats of old within the early years of the network. After all, it was free, and even playing Paper Goat would be cheaper given how a majority of the cards have exited the contemporary meta. A lot of people weren't fans of the Xyz summon, let alone synchro summoning when they rolled around in late 2008. I was certainly one of them. Since the summer of 2005, we saw an emergency ban list, Airblade Turbo, Tier 0 Teledad, Dark Strike OTK, and 2012's Wind-Up Loop certainly didn't help alleviate those who were already on edge with Yu-Gi-Oh! GOAT wasn't met with overbearing cards or degenerate strategies. As we've discussed in the series, it was a Wild West period that ended with relatively fun control matchups. A favorable format combined with growing player frustration, especially with the March 2012 list that did not go over smoothly, would ultimately cause the creation of historical formats. Turns out people didn't like it when Konami actively avoided hitting the problematic top decks and hit lower tier decks instead. In June 2012, in response to Konami's lack of reparation via a May article explaining their reasoning, a Duelist Grounds user created an official April 2005 GOAT format thread since the contemporary game was actively pushing people away. A format of staples and not archetypes. An era where power creep wasn't an issue. The disillusioned duelists would react quite positively to this proposition of GOAT, named after one of the most played cards in the format. Scapegoat. I suppose Thousand Eyes lock format didn't roll off the tongue. All it took was a strong community plus a quality metagame and a dash of Duel Monsters nostalgia to create this preferred cocktail. When it comes to the card pool, GOAT was distinguished to be pre-Cybernetic Revolution, with the last release being the 2005 collectible tins, thus also including the Nightmare Troubadour promo cards. Yes, originally the format did have cards like Panther Warrior, Silent Magician, and Exarion Universe legal. While most of these cards wouldn't have any impact on the meta, Exarion was an exception. This card was powerful given its strong piercing effect against GOAT tokens, and its high stats meant it was Tsukuyomi proof. It certainly was main deck worthy, which raises an issue. What exactly is GOAT format? Because as we've tackled already, the tins would be legal on release on September 5th. But this also was when Cybernetic Revolution was legal, with one final SJC event before the October 2005 list. It makes sense to cut CRV considering the power shift of the set. Back then, it was easy to say everything up to the next set is the format. Yet from a historical perspective, not only is it amorphous, it's not accurate to what the card pool was back then. One could even bring up the conversation on if the Lost Millennium even belongs. There were a number of SJCs before the Rocky Core set, like SJC Los Angeles and Houston, plus the UK Nationals. The thing is, the major events like the US Nationals, Worlds, and everything that the format would sift into would be post-TLM. And the set didn't include many impact cards as we've discussed in the series. Brain Control, Death's Wombat maybe, that was roughly it. There would be some who would argue that GOAT should include CRV given SJC Boston. At the end of the day, the small community needs a standardized list rather than splitting up the player base. Cyber GOATs was scarcely part of the April 2005 list, and the power level increase with cards like Cyber Dragon, the Cyber Fusions, DDM, and Magical Explosion would absolutely change the format from what duelists were originally fond of, as much as I would love more hero support in GOAT. Over the early revival years of GOAT, another sentiment would linger due to trying to define what the format truly is. That thought would be the legalization of the tins. Exarion GOATs is argued due to the fact that 1. It was the last release before the new set, and 2. Some shops had access to the tins early, a similar tale to Airblade Turbo. And why not play it? It was a great card, and it wasn't as busted as Cyber Dragon would come to be. The Perovic build would be the GOAT deck during the revival period, especially in 2014. Exarion just dealt with so many cards like Scapegoat, Tsukuyomi, Kaiku, Asura Priest, Air Knight Parshath, and replaces suboptimal monsters like Enraged Battle-Ox and DD Assailant given Exarion's chaos-friendly dark attribute. Simply put, Exarion simplified the format in an arguably worse way than the format the people once remembered. Due to this, back in April 2015, the duelist Alan C. Pennington would write an article called A Treatise Regarding Exarion Universe that would argue cutting out Exarion of the observed format. There would be a strong debate on both sides, given the already unanimous acceptance of Exarion. But ACP was arguing the longevity of GOAT's health, questioning the status quo, expressing the core values of the Golden Age, and proving why the card makes GOAT less diverse. This breakdown would ultimately lead to the modern era where Exarion Universe and the tin promos are no longer legal, with the April 2005 format being defined by ways of SJC Indianapolis in August 2005, the event prior to the World Championship, which also means the Nightmare Troubadour cards are illegal as well. Rip Rocket Warrior and Magician Circle. The adoption was slow, but surely, remaining a contentious topic from time to time. In 2016, Dueling Network would get shut down, only to be replaced by Dueling Book in February 2017. Upon this new yet familiar simulator, the GOAT format lobby would officially bar Exarion from entering the club. Since then, the GOAT format community has remained strong as one of the retro Yu-Gi-Oh pillars. They would have bountiful in-person events like the numerous GOAT Grand Prix and their own World Championships starting in 2020. And the 2024 champion, Anthony Alvarado, a previous historical GOAT format SJC champion. Konami themselves would even recognize it as part of their Time Wizard formats. No Exarion in all. That said, the format refused to remain the same as it did 20 years ago. With such a heavy fan base, metacalls and card theory alongside format retrospection naturally caused a shift. Due to the 2020 pandemic, retro format saw a surge in popularity, which only added upon format discovery. The famous GOAT control deck that was once viewed as the premier deck would eventually fall back in favor of the Chaos Turbo deck, a much faster, more aggressive, and equally consistent strategy. New cards that were once overlooked were re-evaluated and played like Trap Dust Shoot, which players originally saw as a worse than liquid duo, and Thunder Dragon to facilitate discard plays like Graceful Charity and Raigeki Break to lead to Chaos Monsters. Though rulings and erratas of old would still apply like Sinister Serpent, Necro Valley, and Royal Oppression. Suddenly, GOAT decks had a much tougher time keeping up in this modern era, let alone duelists playing a heavier variety of decks like Chaos Control, Reasoning Gate Turbo, Panda Burn, and 2025's popular Jirai Gumo deck, which is ironic that a format named after the once top deck is now in a lower tier than before. Too late to call this Chaos Turbo format now. And all this variety is in part to Xarion leaving room for said experimentation. Pick your poison, I suppose. The history of GOAT is a rich one that was more than just a day, a month, or even a year. It was a love that spanned 20 years and going thanks to player support. I hope this limited series was able to express everything the April 2005 format did for the game and the revolution of retro formats as a whole, considering there might not be an Edison format or Hat format if it wasn't for Konami tripping up in 2012 and the fans packing up their bags and returning to the past. For as true as day, it was bound that an adventurer would appear and uncover the treasures of the tomb and reveal the hieroglyphs of 4 GOAT tokens.